Okay, so we're doing our final book discussion tonight. I am recording the session for like future readers of the book who may want to not miss out on our discussions because these are usually like fun. We all gush together or we all roast a book together. So, first question, what do you guys think? I guess let's just like be super casual about it. Maybe let's start with overall thoughts of the book.
I'll start strong because I will have nothing to say at the very end. Yeah, yeah. So just reading the first story, I don't know. I found like the writing so nuanced, like the way she captures emotions. Yeah, I just feel like the way I don't know. There's something I don't know that again the technical aspects of how the author is doing it, but such simple interactions, right? I mean, they barely like the see Shoko and the main character. Did was there a name? So you? Like I mean, they barely interact, right? I mean, it's just letter writing and then some awkward conversations, right? But yet, I feel like um, there's so many complicated emotions that run through them, despite such limited interaction they have with each other physically. So I think that's what really pops out to me.
For me, and this goes for almost all the stories, it felt so real. All the stories and all the characters, like they felt like these. I felt like these things actually had happened, and it's almost like being narrated to me. So yeah, mm, I liked almost all the stories. And when I say I liked almost all the stories, it's not like there's only one story which I didn't super love. I should say I loved all the stories, and one of them I just kind of liked. Let's put it that way. And the one that I kind of liked is the. Um, Let me just get the title of it. Michaela. That's the one I just kind of liked, but everything else to me was a hit. Like we read another collection of short stories before, and some were good. Some stories were good. Some stories were okay, and some stories were bad. But this one, and so like I kind of expected the same thing for this book, where I expected some stories to be okay and some stories to be good. But yeah, I'm really happy that all of the stories were really good, but not in a happy way. Like it didn't make me feel happy. Yeah.
For me, my expectations were really high because of what I've read in reviews, and I feel like I liked it less than I wanted to. But on one hand, I really like it because it's so real. Like, it's about the intricacies of relationships, of personal relationships, and it feels real, but it also feels really heavy. So parang um I got drained, and also I feel like I could really relate to a lot of the characters, and parang all of my dysfunctions. I saw myself in a lot of the characters, so, and I didn't like, and also parang felt I felt frustrated for a lot of the characters, and I'm not sure that I like that. Although it feels real for me, parang it feels real, so I like it. But also, parang I want something more hopeful, I guess. Yan. I didn't like it that much. I liked it, but parang I wanted to like it more. Or
Yeah, that's fair. What about you, Sue?
Uh, for me, I really liked the first two stories, especially the second one. That was like, wow, that's amazing. For some other stories, I felt like some of the stories, it might be because of the translation. It was a little hard to follow. Like when the translator tried to make the English sound casual for the grandmother. But I think it was hard to translate from Korean to English because yeah, it read a little weird for me. But I think the strength of the book is that the characters are very distinct, and I think because it's written originally in Korean, it's very organic, and like Rafael said, it felt very real. And I always like reading translated stories because it's nice to see English from that's not written originally in English. Sometimes it appears a little different. Yeah, but overall, I really liked it.
I haven't finished the last story. Sorry.
Okay.
I think halfway through, but wow, this is good. This is really nice. It's one of my favorites since we've been doing this for a year, more than a year. It's one of my favorites. It's painful. It's a super painful book.
Well, I will say I agree. Super painful. Um, Also, with what Michelle said, like it felt so real, and it. I felt I got teary eyed a lot of in a lot of the stories. There were like really scenes that were so specific, but at the same time, I could relate to it when it came to um, like the friendships, like the heartbreaks, some of the family drama stuff. It just cut me open. And I love how the somehow the translation was able to just get the emotion right. And I'm sure it was a difficult thing, and maybe the original text might have been better. I don't know. But like it was I would have to say the translator did a good job in terms of conveying emotion with such clarity. Although, like what Siwei pointed out, like when grandparents talk, there's that like I ain't or whatever. Like it's kind of
Yeehaw!
yeah. It's sometimes it's
I,
like
I'm
cowboy, and then sometimes it's
I'm a
like
Western. You're
yeah,
you're hard. Your
exactly.
life ain't gonna be hard.
So I don't know what to feel about that, but it's like I mean, I like that's such a small thing for me at least. Everything else was really spot on, and yeah, it wasn't happy.
I feel like it's a racist choice. I think. I mean, she puts the accent to characters who come from poor backgrounds. So if you're a poor old person who's Korean, the translator will give you a southern white accent.
Oh, good spot.
Like it only appeared in the last story, in the first story. Like
Yeah, exactly.
the
Yeah,
grandma and the grandpa in the first story. I don't know. Yeah, yeah. I guess that's her marker for being poor. Like if you have the hick, like the hick accent.
maybe. Oh, right, right. That's what you call it. I forgot what you call it. Maybe unless it applies to actual Koreans when they speak Koreans as well. I don't know, right? Like,
So I have a question. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Leo, because I only read the first book, first story. So these stories, they are not related to one another at all. Like, so, and they're set not just in Korea. They're in like, you know, you said Yeehaw, so is that U.S.? Yeah.
they're set in Korea,
Oh, but
but
there's a cowboy,
yeah, like sometimes
Korean
with the
cowboy.
translation when people talk, but it's just for the two characters, the grandpa at the start, and
Mm.
then a grandma at the last story.
Okay, I
Yeah.
see, I see.
But it's a jet setting story. Sorry, collection. It's a
Mm.
jet setting collection. There's a story in France, Germany.
Mm.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
all
Yeah.
around. Yeah.
Cosmopolitan author.
Yeah, and but the stories always have at least one Korean character.
Yeah. Okay, well, since we're touching on like the different like stories, um, maybe now's a good time to share what our most favorite, if we could give one, most favorite story from the collection and the least favorite and why. Anyone can start.
Robbie's is the first story. That's his favorite.
Yeah, that's definitely my favorite. So yeah, but why do I like it? I mean, yeah, you guys say it's real. I mean, I definitely agree. I'm not because the character was creative, right? She did screenwriting, right, for movies. So I mean, I can't relate with that struggle as a creative, but I guess the struggle of finding your own path in your industry, right? I mean, I guess I could relate to that, and yeah, it does feel a little depressing. Yeah, what Raf said here, the pain is too real. It's like, oh, I felt it, and yeah. I mean, it's really great to see writing that can really capture those types of emotions, right? Yeah, I don't know, like um, there's the things happening in the story naman aren't super depressing, right? I mean, at least for the first story, it's not as if she lost a job in particular, or it's not the actual things that are happening aren't what's depressing. What captures you is like how she describes her thought process, how she felt as if she felt better. She thought she was better than what she truly was, and then that realization that I'm actually just mediocre. It's like, oof. Yeah, that's right. I mean, those are very, it's so real, right? And yeah, like nothing actually happened. It's just her mindset that was described. And yeah, so I think that was really great writing on her part, on the author's part.
Well, I don't mind going next. I think my favorite one is the second story, Sin Chao Sin Chao. So same with Siwei. Like I love Thoy so much. Can I just say like I don't know if I have a crush on this character or something, but like okay, Thoy aside, I'm not gonna like girl crush here on Thoy, but I love how it was a friendship story between families, and it was like friendship from two different Asian families that, kind of like found community in a foreign country, which is Germany. And then um you don't you kind of guess that the Vietnamese family has gone through stuff because of like, Vietnam War. We all know that. But then we also find out that like how the Koreans were involved, and just seeing it play out just broke me. But I think it was also my favorite because it's the most hopeful story, I think. Like just seeing these characters who went through trauma, who saw their families be killed and be able to still, open themselves up to the world and love people and welcome people into their homes. Like, man, that was really like something. Like, I know it's just a fictional story, but reading it and because the characters felt fleshed out to me in this story, it's kind of to me it's like wow, it's possible. Like you can go through so much shit, and this is like war is the worst shit that could ever happen, and coming out of it, you know, like trying to heal, trying to be whole, and having still a lot of love to give. I was like wow, I want to be like that. I want to be like Thoy. So yeah.
Since my favorite is also the second one, I'll just add on to what Steph is saying. I really like the second story because of how the author described a lot of like social nuances that I feel as we grow older become very apparent. Like there's this paragraph on page 56. Sorry, not 56. The part where they fought each other and The part where the Vietnamese mother didn't even bother to get angry with the Korean father because she just thought that he wouldn't understand. And that part that's wait, let me find that line. um, okay, let me. Can I copy paste it into the chat box? I'm just gonna do that. Oh no.
Yeah, sure, sure, sure.
Anyway, like the last line, like it was a conventional choice made by adults who did not wish to hate each other or to be wounded by each other any further. It's just a really small thing, but I felt like it describes something that we all have experienced to a certain extent, and I've never seen this feeling being described before. And also, it's such a sad story. I really wish that they stayed friends. Yeah, this story broke my heart, and I really like the ending because it's like even after a lot of time has passed, like good feelings are still there. For me, this is easily the most powerful story out of the whole book.
Um, I have no favorite. All of those stories except for Michaela, I more or less liked equally. Although, if there is one thing that stood out to me was from the story Sister My Little Sune, and how they described how they treated the so the little sister Sune, right, is actually her cousin, and she married a, I guess, a activist. And what stood out to me was their portrayal of that era, of how cruel they were to activists. And usually we hear about how in North Korea, or like during the war, like it's almost painted as like good side, bad side, where North Korea is the bad side and like South Korea is the good side. But actually, in South Korea, they also had the same kind of like they had the same kind of, I guess, treatment of people as the North Koreans did, I suppose. Um, well, what do I mean by that? Like, I remember the portrayal of how they said you should just keep your mouth shut, or you should, like, if you keep on going about like complaining about like what's going on, blah blah blah, then we'll just be ostracized by people, etc. And I remember, because I watched this podcast of a North Korean defector, and she was describing how it is. And I've said this, I might have said this a few times on this group, but maybe those who haven't heard it, it really affected me what she said, which is she blamed her grandmother for like North Korea, for like their situation. And the reason why she blamed her grandmother is because only her grandmother knew what it was like before like the authoritarian regime. And everybody else born after her were born into this world, and so like they can't really stand up and say like, hey, this is wrong. And so only like the grandmother experienced that, right? And had the grandmother at the time had her grandmother at the time, like, not necessarily her grandmother but that generation, had they stood up and said like this is wrong, then maybe they wouldn't be enslaved. And and then and so like what had happened basically was probably everybody's looking out for their self-interests and nobody wants to stick out. And so everybody says, so that I can survive, or so I won't be ostracized, I'm just going to keep quiet. Little did they know they traded the freedom of their kids forever, right? And then, but the thing is, and so you're thinking like, oh yeah, that's fucked up in North Korea. But then you read the story and it's the exact same thing that actually happened in South Korea, where people basically kept quiet to all the authoritarian things that the South Korean government was doing. And so it was actually the same thing being experienced north and south. It's just in a different way, I guess, or like a different ideology, but the way the ideology was still expressed, the violence that was still done to people was the same. So that's what stood out to me, and like I feel like many of the stories would bring up these like national trauma that had happened. Like there was a off the top of my head, there was the ferry accident, right? So I really appreciated how the story would bring up these like national trauma that we never hear about in when people bring up like I guess when people talk about South Korea nowadays, it's just like highly consumerist society, the pop stars, the Instagram food, beauty products, and that kind of stuff. Maybe even the tourism, and uh, like every time they mentioned Jeju Island, and Jeju Island got mentioned a few times, and like I really wish that they mentioned somehow, like wink, wink. Oh yeah, we fucking like committed genocide here too. Like, but yeah. Anyway, so I really did appreciate that this book was able to like I guess be honest, even if it wasn't like I mean it didn't have to be like oh yeah this is how fucking bad it was. Like it was pretty subtle about it, but then it's enough for you to like really grasp like how I guess um, sad it was.
I have too many favorites. I can't. This is a hard book. Thank you, Voshel. I think this was your suggestion. Wow, it's so good. This book is so good. So, but uh, I think maybe for me was Hanji and Yongju. Uh, because it's something very close to me. I mean, it's something that I also experienced, the summer camp feeling. But more than that, it's the way the character thought. I really felt that it was something. It really spoke to me. The way that she presented the author presented the character as someone who's stuck in geologic time, and she's so concerned with preserving geologic time that she forgets about the present. And then I love the way that she mixes in Buddhism, yung reincarnation. Like there's so many ideas. It's a simple love story where nothing happens. that but there's so many things yes, geologic metaphor. Like there's so many things under the underground that's happening with the story. So it's like I don't know. For me, it was such a simple story because it's nothing. It's like, wow, they didn't fall in love or they didn't end up together. I sorry, Robbie, spoiler. But
It's okay, no problem.
it's like I felt like you could do so much. Wow, I was amazed that you could do so much with a simple non-story like this. Like it could have ended up to become the most boring piece in the book because there's no national drama. It's really like two people and they're like super torpe. Sorry, Shue. I mean, they're like super shy and they can't express their feelings. So it's like, oh god, this is gonna be the most boring one, and then it's not. So I think for me that shows her skill. Like she can take the most boring topic and put so much into it.
I just want to say that Hanji and Yongju is my second favorite story because I honestly felt like I was there and I felt like I experienced the summer. I've never gone through summer camp. I never had this like summer could have been fling thing. But then I felt like
It's the best. It's the best.
noted Leo. It's too late for me. But like I do feel like I was there, and even if I never felt it firsthand, like I felt it here, and I'm so like I guess thankful that I was on that trip. And I think one of the things that I super like about that story was, yeah, you phrased it really well, that it really could have been boring. Nothing really happens. They're just kind of into each other, but not, or like not into each other enough to verbalize anything. But I love how the events were just so clear. like I don't even know what the author went through to write something like this. Like, and I also love Hanji. I mean, I don't love him, but like I love that he has this humor
You
when
don't love him enough to say what you feel, Steph.
yeah, exactly. But like I love that part where Hanji looks at Young Youngsu's notebook or her journal. And then, well, obviously it's gonna be in Korean, and obviously he's not gonna understand it. But I love that the author says it, or like, it's clearly pointed out that there's a language barrier between them. And I love that Hanji, like pretends that he understands Korean. Oh, like today, I enjoyed my walk with Hanji, and it's like I love it. Like it's just so real. And this was like a guy that I don't know, any girl I guess would have had a crush on. But sorry if like this is getting superficial or whatever. But I just love these little small details. Like even if it doesn't have a national trauma, like the author was still able to ground it in these super small details of, yeah, she is Korean, therefore she would be a certain way. And sorry, that might sound stereotypical, or like, he comes from a different culture, therefore he is also in a certain way. So yeah, I love the immersion. Yeah, I guess that's what I love about this. It's like immersion in this story.
You said that you felt like you were there. I also felt the same thing, and like when the like I felt like I was in that summer camp, and I was like one of the other like camp attendees, and they were like, oh, gossiping about like, oh, what's going on with them, and like I knew that we weren't gonna get a I knew we weren't gonna find out what the fuck happened, because when I read about how the other camp attendees were also wondering what happened, I'm like, okay, if they're wondering and like she's wondering, and that means, and I'm wondering, that means we're always gonna wonder. We're never gonna find out. I already knew. So it's like it's kind of like meta, where like like, well, of course we wouldn't know because she didn't know or whatever. But yeah, and a side note, because you said that this story didn't have like national trauma, I did feel like I did feel the cultural like critique of like I guess um, Korean society, and this I guess this goes true with most stories, but I think it was kind of more pronounced with this, especially with how it described like her background as like um, supposedly she should be doing like I guess going up the corporate ladder, and like in Korean society like this whole like, oh, you're defined by the corporate position that you have, or like the job that you have, and like I guess how much money you're making. And I remember reading about how she was worried that everybody would be judging her for doing this like spiritual journey, spiritual like camp thing. So yeah, it still contained like that like critique of Korean culture, which is cool.
For me, my favorite is the last story, The Secret. Because it's so, for me, it's so gut wrenching. It's so emotional. It's so painful, and you can really feel the love of the grandma for Jimin, for the granddaughter. So it's really painful. Like um and the details on the winter coat, may something about winter coat, yun. And um I guess I like it because I'm wondering about that what if idea na parang, can you really keep that kind of secret, or and parang I know na parang the grandma is dying, and so parang it doesn't matter. And yeah, but I think it's such a big secret to keep, na parang yun, I'm fascinated about the idea.
I have a
And that's
question,
it.
I guess. Oh, you know, sorry.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Sorry. No, like, I guess I have a question for everyone. Like, So, lots of different stories. Was there like a central theme that kind of, unifies all these short stories? Like,
Pain.
Pain.
pain, okay. Mm. Just like, is there like what? Like with the love story, but with the summer camp, what did they? What was there pain there as well?
Yes.
Oh, because they
I
because they
think
didn't end up together. Yeah, okay, just tell me, like, why did they not end up together? What they, as
I
in,
don't know. I don't know. Leo, do you have insights? Because
No, it's that stupid for me. This is my theory as a summer camper who gossips about other summer campers, like what Rafael said. My theory is that Hanji was really into Yongju, but Yongju was too shy. Like they were both too shy. So Hanji made the decision na, okay, I'm not gonna pay attention to her anymore because I'll just be hurt in the last few days of camp if I try to. Like I don't think she's into me, so I'll just ignore her. I'll just ignore her because it's going to be too painful when we finally part. So yes, I think that's that. I don't know. I'm super biased because I think I've acted that way in one camp. So
thank you
yeah.
for the honesty, Leo.
I can try to give a swing at this. Like if there's a central theme. I'm not sure if it's pain. Maybe it's like suffering, and it's suffering that humans cause other, like suffering that humans who love each other cause one another, and the reason why they cause that suffering is not because they wanted to hurt the other person, but it's perhaps because they are flawed people, or I mean, because people are flawed, and it's almost like a tragedy, but the tragedy is not like circumstance around them. It's more of like it's more of like behavior that you can't really explain, but it's just what had happened. Almost something like that. I guess that's that's my opinion.
um, so what you were saying about the suffering, I know. I noticed in the first story, there was a theme about there wasn't a lot of communication going on, and so like si Soyu, she felt jealous when it was revealed to her that what, like you and my grandpa and Shoku were close, and she felt hurt by that. She felt betrayed, and because there was just a lack of communication, I suppose, and they only started communicating when the grandfather died, right? So, and then what Leo was saying about the two lovers or would be lovers was that I guess there was a gap in communication, and he ended up not telling her how she felt or whatever. So I don't know. Is that something that's consistent with the other stories?
I would say yes. Like, I feel like it's pain, it's suffering that's caused by people who care about each other, but just like, I don't know, fate, I guess, or external circumstances that have shaped them. And I guess the way I also see it is kind of like, in a way, maybe like missed opportunities, or like, like an asymptote, I guess, like almost there, getting close, but never really like close enough. And that's kind of my vibe as well. Like when it comes to like a lot of the interactions, it's like a lot of the characters have put walls around themselves, and they can't seem to overcome or get over those walls, or destroy the walls, maybe because of fear of being ostracized by other people. So that's more political. It could just be like plain shyness, or it could be more personal, like, oh, I'll never see this person again, so what's the point of telling her I like her. So like all these things kind of, yeah, I guess what people maybe impose on themselves, and whether or not, they will overcome that. So, yeah. That's a good question.
For me, it's about people quietly suffering. It's about uh, the restraint that people impose on themselves. Like, I guess last time, Leo mentioned the word timpe, yung parang the restraint.
Super
This
timpe.
this is not a theme, but I think something that the stories do really well is like showing the perspective of the different characters. Like, for example, in the story that's the favorite of me and Siwei, the Sin Chao, the second story, you see it from the perspective of a child who has to understand the politics of, the grown up world, and all the traumas of the grown up world, and like what she regrets because she didn't know enough as a child, something like that. So it's cool to see, in the different stories, as it's trying to convey like how different people suffer. The perspective of the characters, I think, plays a really important role, because you see, or you get to feel them looking back, always in hindsight, I should have known this, or I didn't know this at the time. So you would always have those kind of like time markers that really show you, the character at the present thinking of the past. So, and with that is like maybe regret or whatever. So it's really cool.
We can talk about the first person POV. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
It's either, well, we're gonna talk about like either first person POV, because a lot of the stories are in first person, or if you wanna go to like a least favorite story. So any of those.
Oh, because you're just talking about the,
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, we can talk about the first person point of view.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say that, like, just to add to what you're saying, like, the first person POV works so well for a lot of these because a lot of it is introspection. It's looking back at what had happened, and so the first person point of view for me worked really, really well because, in a way, the character or the narrator is they always all of them seem to be hyper aware of their own thoughts and what they were feeling and what they were thinking, and then it being in first person POV allowed them to allowed them to have this tone or perspective of introspection where they're like trying to analyze what had happened. Almost it felt like they recognized that there was this tragedy that had happened in their relationships with the people that they love, and them trying to figure out what happened gave this like introspective like perspective, which was like brutally honest. And I think you could only really do that in first person point of view. And we didn't really need to know the full context. Like we didn't need to know the other person's side to like appreciate the stories, because like the other person's side would have been like it would have been the same story, just their own perspective or like their own like reasoning or like their own like introspection almost. And so we actually don't need that. What's more important is really like I guess and like them looking into themselves and like trying to understand what went wrong, what happened, why is it that they acted this way or that way. And I think that's why it felt so fucking real, because it almost felt like, like it reminded me of my own thoughts, where like you're just running events through your head and trying to wonder like, okay, why the hell did that happen? And like you're coming up with maybe all kinds of reasons or all kinds of like explanations. So yeah, to me that's why it felt so real. And yeah, that's why first person point of view really worked in a lot of the stories.
Yeah, and just build on what Raf's saying. Like yeah, because with first person, right? So there's a lot of introspection because that's all you have to work with. And what I was mentioning a while ago, what I noticed with the first story, it's like there's a lot of lack of communication. So it's like because you're the character's just guessing, right? Yeah, again with the first story, it's like uh yeah, there's just so much she didn't know about her grandfather, her own mother, and even Shoko. You know, it was all like whatever she saw. So yeah, with Shoko, she saw that, oh, when they were younger, her smile was so, it looked as if she was so cool and better than her, right? And that's all she had to work with. That one fleeting smile. She didn't know anything else what Shoko was thinking, that she was going through some depression. You know, so you're all your overthinking and you know what you're saying, yeah, it's coming from a place you lack information, right? And then so yeah, your mind just goes places, and sometimes those places are dark and very depressing because well yeah, because it's a in a way it's like a flawed process, you know, but it's all we have, right? Sometimes like ideally you have everything in front of you, like you can ask everybody directly, but often the case with these stories, it shows that yeah, you don't really have everything in front of you, and you're left to your own devices, and sometimes it gets a little depressing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, exactly. Um, and I think the interesting part, because okay, I think in this group, I'm sure that COA is a short story writer. I'm not a short story writer, so I don't know, like, because other writers or other short story writers I know have like a favorite point of view to write in. So other people, like for example, Andy, her favorite is second person for short stories. Other people, by default, it's third person. I'm not sure about you, Siwei, so maybe you can enlighten us after my talk of like about the which point of view you like to write in. What I found interesting with the point of view here in the stories, most of the stories, it's in first person point of view and it is introspective. But I was surprised by how it was able to um show me like the depths of the world. Like I'm only getting it in first person, but suddenly I'm learning about, oh, another aspect of the Vietnam War. Oh, I'm suddenly learning about, like, maybe all these other characters and their respective dramas. Like I didn't expect that much, like depth, I guess, in the world and in the different characters. Because I think, at least, with my background, which is just nonfiction, and we always just write in almost always write in first person by default. Like when we talk about, when we tell our personal stories, it's really very personal, and it hardly, is able to expand in the same way. And like I don't know, it's interesting to me how something so personal and written in the first person was able to capture, like the tense dynamics of a friendship, or um awkward moments, missed opportunities. So yeah. So maybe COA, did you feel anything when you were reading it in first person?
I agree with what you said about um, that there's so much writing that's centered that tells us a lot about the world the characters living in, and I don't think I'm a very good writer. I'm a little scared of like first person POV because it gets egotistical very easily, like right? But in the case of like the first story, she's so, at least the character, they're always so centered on other people and what other people are thinking or what they're experiencing that it feels very authentic. Because when we like go about our daily lives, like we don't think like I am what right now, right? So I think it's a very good usage of first person POV to write fiction, and yeah, I think there's a lot to learn from it.
Yeah, I honestly, like, I think Robbie was the one who mentioned it, like, at the start of this discussion, how like she's able to convey a lot, but like you don't really see how she does it. Like for me, like craft wise, I'm trying to study the different works. Like, how is she able to do this? And like suddenly make this, like make me emotional or whatever. And it's so hard to, at least for me, it's so hard to identify like what the style is or something. Somehow it just seemed so natural. And I mean, I guess that's the thing, right? Like it's almost like magic, like, and you don't really see how the magician does her tricks. And yeah, like I wish I could like understand, and I don't think I am like that, I don't know, smart enough, I guess, to like pinpoint craft wise, like how she made it happen, how something that can easily become just an egotistical story or egotistical main character, how it could just ooze with sympathy, compassion, regret, resentment. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned in the second story, it's from the child's perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if it's from a child's perspective and it's first person, wouldn't that also mean that the things the the narrator is noticing, like, I mean, there's a limitation to what how they perceive like an event because they're a child, right? Like, can the child really capture the nuances of some politics that's happening? Don't they just see, oh, good and bad are fighting? Oh, I have to pick a side. Like, or in the narration, is the narrator mature enough to capture those ideas? Yeah.
So the second story answers that, like how the event plays out and how the child, how the
Hmm.
narrator understands like that she messed up because she doesn't understand the politics, and she
Yeah, yeah.
tries to insert herself in the conversation, and then the shit happens. So it's that where it's like when she learns that, oh no, I messed up, I'm gonna try to fix it, and then I mess up more. So like that is part of the story. Yeah.
I see. I see. Okay.
Sorry, I was listening while working. But
Ah, yeah, Siwei is also right. Sorry to cut you, Leo, but yeah, Siwei said it right also in the chat.
yeah, yeah. No, actually, what to add to what Shiwei said, I think this collection is like the perfect example of why we use first person. Because a lot of the pain that happens is because of the limitations of our perspective. Like what Robbie said, like there's so much miscommunication, there's so much things that we don't see, and I think because she uses the first person for a lot of the stories, it's like yeah, this is why problems like this happen because we're trapped in our own eyeballs.
All right. That said, I will try to transition to. So Raphael already said that the story that is his least favorite is Michaela, which is the first story we see here that's written in the third person point of view. See, my like I tried to make it a smooth transition. So from POV to what is your least favorite story and why?
Okay, I go first because I was also said right. Michaela, I didn't know what the fuck happened, and I didn't know what the fuck happened. I wasn't interested enough to reread it or figure out what happened. I mean, everything. I mean, I'm not saying that like I didn't like it. I did enjoy reading it actually, and I did enjoy reading it. And when it turns out that there's this punchline, right? Like I didn't get the punchline, so you know, like if there wasn't a punchline, I would have actually may have liked it more. But because there was a punchline that I didn't get, I didn't like it. I didn't like it as much. I didn't love it.
How about the others? Who else feels Michaela is their least favorite? Okay, there's Leo. I'll also raise my hand. Me. So Michelle, Siwei, no. Okay. Okay, Leo. Why? Since we're on Michaela.
Ah no, it's just where's the pain? it's so hopeful. I mean, no, I what I liked about Michaela was the very real experience of poverty that was communicated with the varicose veins and the constant working and everything. But it just felt I don't know, like it seems to validate the whole offer your poverty up to the Lord narrative, which to me is always so suspect. I can't jive with that. So whether she was critiquing it, I'm sure she was critiquing it. I'm sure the author was poking holes into that narrative, but just the saintliness of the grandmother really turned me off. It's like no, stop.
I don't know what to feel about that as well. Like when I found out that the woman um and is in this like very questionable marriage slash relationship, and but the thing is, like, there were things that I really liked about, like, there were opinions that she had that I really appreciated, where she says that society only values work that brings in money, and for her it's like, no, if it's something you're passionate about, right? Like her husband is into just reading and writing and attending protests, right? Like she sees value in that, and I'm like, right, I mean, she does have a point, but like I draw the line between, appreciating like work that doesn't really yield in money, and her having to carry this man on her back when she was probably his student and he was still her teacher. So I'm just like, I'm not sure how much of this relationship is consensual on her end and whatever. So I'm not sure what to feel about that. And so that's just like the start of the story. And then with the ending, I'm also like not sure. I think a lot of the when I was reading the story, I was just waiting, I guess, for the hit for me, and I was waiting and waiting, and while I was enjoying, all the very specific acts of love, when it there were parts where I was like, wait, so what's going on now in the story, or like, there was a particular one where it was kind of trippy. Like she thinks like one of the daughter, I think, thinks that she sees her mom on TV, and we're not really sure if that was the mom or not. Like I'm not like I don't know what I was like expecting, but like I was at that point I was like, anything could happen in this world. Like that could be her mom or couldn't be her mom. And I at some point I was like, is Michaela dead? Like I was just trying to like figure out how the story was working. And by the time the end happened, I was like, oh, it's just like, oh, touchy feely. Like, oh, yes, my heart speaks, or my heart says Michaela. I'm just like, oh, okay. So I guess I think the trippiness is just from me. And yeah. I mean,
Baduri, baduri.
would I reread the story? Probably not. But like if I were to reread it, it's just like to understand like what is going on. But so far, I did not get to reread it yet to understand. So for me, that's the weakest.
Actually, for me, Michaela is a close second. But I think I was wondering whether it's because of the translation, because there's a lot towards the end. There's a lot of that woman, the woman, that old woman, and maybe in Korean they sound very different. But here, because they sound so similar, sometimes I'm like, which woman? And I don't know who that woman is referring to, because technically Michaela is also a young woman or something. But like what you guys said, it's a little confusing, and I can see that she's trying to do a perspective switch, like in the different vignettes. But for me, it was more confusing than it didn't work as well as the other stories too.
So why is it your second favorite? What did you
No,
like
no, not
about it?
second favorite. My second, close second least favorite.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Got it.
So what's your
Yeah.
least favorite?
Um, I was thinking it's most likely Leo's favorite, the one in Russia, a song from afar. Sorry.
Was that kind of it?
A song from afar is the Russian one, and Hanji
Is it? Yeah,
Gyeongju
yeah, yeah.
is the summer camp. Okay, okay. Wait, so sorry, your least favorite is the Russian one, a song from afar.
Hmm.
Okay, why?
Uh, okay, let me look at it. Um, I feel like their relationship wasn't very clear. Well, I think it makes sense, sort of like stylistically. She's looking back at her memories, right, to something that's already gone. But the whole piece was very empty to me. I could not see or feel their relationship very vividly in order to empathize with her loss. So it feels like the character is a bit of like a phantom to me. Like I can't really see how they made the leap into like such a close relationship because she hated her in the beginning, right? Yeah, and also the part where they mentioned a lot of the Sunday, that was a little confusing for me. But I think that's a minor problem. Uh, but I think again that's because it's a translated piece. But I would have liked a little more insight into the cultural landscape that they were operating in. So I feel like the piece could have used a lot more details. At least I wanted to see them, but I didn't get to see them. It's not as deep or as heartfelt as the other stories, I feel. I would like to hear Leo's um, opinions though.
Oh, I'm supposed to. I will defend the Russian story. Okay. No. The character of Mijin, um, Sunbei. I like the seniority, the hierarchy. It was very that scene when the seniors were attacking Mijin. I can see why the main character fell in love with her senior, with Mijin. Like she projected such great strength, and then for that strength to be transplanted to another country, uh for me, maybe yeah, you're right, it's not as heartfelt as the Africa one, the monastery summer camp one, but I like the relationship, yeah. I guess that's my only defense here. I like the relationship.
Do you think it's a queer story, Siwei and Leo? Do you think it's a queer
Oh yeah,
story?
yeah, super. Aren't they like, hindi ba sila queer? Sorry, I spoke in Tagalog. Aren't they like gay?
Okay, so Siwei, you think so too? Does everyone else except Robbie think so too? That's
Robbie,
queer.
no, I'm spoiling Robbie. I don't know. Baka maybe Rochelle thinks different, but that's the reading I got. That
Okay,
they were
Raphael
really, and,
did
and,
not
and the
think it was
Russian
queer.
roommate fell in love. And yes, I do have a penchant for romance. Yeah, I like. No, my day job is I edit romance novels. So
You
Okay.
mean you have a penchant for summer romance or romance
Mm.
from
I,
with a
I
foreigner? I'm just kidding.
in fairness, my job is really editing romance novels. Like 80% of my job is that.
Wait, so like, why is it not obvious that they're gay? Like, the pronouns are like ambiguous. Like, is the name like is it referred to as my roommate? Is it like that?
No,
E-
she wanted to kiss me, Jin. She very early on, she said that out loud. No, sorry,
Uh-huh.
she narrated that out loud. She didn't, say it because she's shy. Like everyone in the
Yeah,
story
yeah,
here
yeah.
is shy. They don't say what they feel. Um, and the roommate, the Russian roommate, the Polish roommate, sorry. Parang the way the story ended was this is the beginning of our story together. Like I feel like that's such a clear sign of, I mean, that's it's like
Right, right, right.
wave red flag of romance right there. Like our journey together was walking down the aisle. So
I also felt like it was queer because there was that, I don't know, maybe, well well, for sure the kiss part, like the main character or narrator wanting to kiss the Sunbae. Like for me, I was like, oh wow, okay, this is like explicitly sensual, okay. But then there was also we're also told that they lived together for 3 years, and that desire to cook for the other person because the other person is sick. So I don't know if like maybe really good, friendship is like that if you're like best
really
friends.
good
I
Korean
don't know.
roommates.
I've never I've never had that sort of like best friend that would cook for me, and I don't think I've been that best friend as well. But I don't know. That's why like for me, like I think it might
It's like your
be
aunt bringing her
queer.
best friend to the Christmas dinner.
But yeah, I did wonder though, like, is it like, could the reason why it's not as like immersive maybe as the other stories is because it wanted to play up this maybe like potential that it's a queer story, therefore everything is really like, if heterosexual relationships are already complicated and people are shy, more so the case for queer people. So that's kind of like the vibe that I got. But it's also not a favorite of mine. So
I literally have the perfect video for this, and I linked it in the chat. It's just a short. You guys can watch it if you
Please.
want. It's like
Yeah, yeah, I'm watching it.
two straight dudes.
I don't know, Rochelle, is that yun rin ba yung nakuha mo? Ako lang ba? It's just me.
I didn't get that it's a queer story.
Oops, okay,
Yes,
maybe
I
I'm forcing my reading on everyone else. I'm sorry.
no, but I feel like because of what you guys mentioned, parang I'm convinced that it is a queer story. But while I was reading it, I didn't get it.
Friend sandwich. Yes,
friend sandwich.
friend sandwich.
I fucking love you, man.
No,
Yeah, that's literally what I thought. I thought they were just like really close friends. You know, it's like,
Yes.
yeah, bro, I fucking cook for you, bro. If you're sick, bro, I'll fucking cook for you, bro.
no, no, no. But there's that detail in the. Can you? There's that detail in the story where like the dishes that she mentions, right? Because I think that friend is like vegetarian, right? And the dishes she mentions a lot of dishes because this is a sandwich. I think sandwich is relatively easy to prepare compared to like a Korean stew or I don't know japchae. I don't know. I don't cook, but like in my head, like reading Crying in H Mart, where the narrator, talks about how the mom makes the or how she makes, the Korean food for her mom. Like it does take effort. So yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's a whole buffet.
Yeah, so like if this guy's bro was sick, he would have made a whole buffet. Is what I'm saying. This is an everyday thing, Sandwich is an everyday thing, you know what I mean? Like, but if your bro is sick, man, you're gonna make him a whole buffet spread. Like, no homo, right? Like, like you just love your bro, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, no. If my friend like made a spread, a buffet spread for me, yeah, you're right. I'd be like, yo, what the fuck, dude?
What about you, Michelle? What's your least favorite story?
Um, my least favorite is Hanji and Yoongju.
Oh my god, why?
No, I like there are merits to the story that I like, but for me, because as I said, parang I see myself in the characters. I see my dysfunctions in the characters, and I don't parang it. I want parang it's some parang the idea of parang keeping it all in. Parang the consequence of that is parang it's so heavy, and I personally parang I always experience that. So parang for me, I that's something that I want to overcome in my personal life. So it's like parang I didn't like the way it ended. Like it's for me, I was just hoping for closure.
That's the tragedy. You ain't
I
gonna
feel
get no
attacked in this
closure,
group.
man.
I
You're never gonna know what could have been. You know, like that's the pain.
Well, to be fair, the story does offer like a I
What could have
think
been?
yeah, no.
It
It's not
does.
no, it's I'm not
Oh,
saying the story offers of what could have been. This story cuz I think the narrator says there that her grandmother taught her to be able to let go and not seek closure. And I think this is what Leo says. Like it's very like it does touch into that like Buddhist philosophy. Like you don't need closure. I mean, even if you want to, you don't really need it. You just like kind of like let it go, and you don't want to be too attached to those things. And like that is a very Buddhist thing. You don't want to be attached to these things because you don't want it to ruin, your future chances of happiness or whatever, future love maybe.
okay. I got a question though about that story in particular, right? So she, in the end, she dumps her diary in the snow to be forgotten, right? However, there is this line where she says, "As I write this," and so I was wondering whether this story was an entry in her diary, or was this an entry in a new diary where she's trying to summarize what had happened? Because if she writes in this piece, right? Like if she writes in the piece that as I'm writing this, then we know, wouldn't that mean that this is a separate piece from the diary that she dumped? Like how could you write in your diary that you dumped it after the fact, after you dumped it? You know what I mean? Like, did you fish it? You can't fish it. Like, she didn't fish it out. Obviously, that's the point. Like, she left it behind, right? So, actually, in the end, in my interpretation was she actually never let it go. Like, even if she let go, I would say, of these specific moments and like the individual day to day things, she didn't let go of that memory in her head. And to me at least, the piece was her trying to, I guess, synthesize, or we're back in that whole like introspection thing where she's trying to like, I guess, recall or try to make sense of it. Like I don't think this, so what do you guys think? Like, was this piece an entry in the diary that she included as she dumped it? Or was this piece like after she dumped it she tried to, I don't know. I guess I guess we don't really know. I just want to know what you think.
okay. As the defender of this story, like I don't know why that's suddenly my role, but I thought more people would like the story. Anyway, no, for me, that, and I think this is something that Wei also pointed out. Maybe the details, I'm not sure. But to answer your question specifically, Raf, I think maybe she didn't actually write it down because there's a section where she's like, her grandmother was telling her, your memory is too sharp, your memory is too good, and you just keep replaying things from the past over and over in your head. So she may have written it down actually, or it may have just been an expression. But I also think there's also, and this is what Shui also pointed out, there are some there are really some rough spots in the translation in many stories. Like there's always one line where you're like, huh? Like like in Michaela, in Hangjin Yongju, even in the Russia story. I think maybe just for me, I didn't feel that just in Shoko's smile. But everywhere else, it's like there's really some parts where like, huh, what? So yun. I don't know if it's just me again. Baka here I am again, you know, saying something, but that's what I felt. What I felt.
I'm not sure if this helps, but one of the things that struck me about Hanji and Yeongju was the first part. It was italicized, so I that was quite striking to me. Like I wasn't sure at the start, like why it was italicized. So I don't know if, and I think it was also in the present tense, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check. Yeah, it's in present tense. So it kind of makes me think that the first part where it's italicized, like it's something that she is, thinking at the moment. And there's no, like, she's not literally, writing it down. It's her thinking it, she's in front of the glacier and all that stuff. And maybe, the things that we are seeing after that, I don't know if she actually wrote it down, or I don't know if it gets that meta, or if it's just telling us the story itself. So I'm not sure. But the first part being italicized really caught my eye, and I wasn't sure what that was exactly. And also the part where we get like a fast forward, quote unquote fast forward, and then and we're told that she is married to Hanji, and then bears has to take care of the paralyzed sister and all that stuff. And Hanji leaves her alone. I honestly thought that was real, and I was really hoping that would turn out to be true, but it doesn't. So it was really surprising that we have that, like, dream aspect or wish fulfillment. I'm not sure what it, like, really does or what it adds to the story. But it definitely kept me wanting to see how it's going to end. Okay, so Raphael says he's satisfied with our answers about this question. I think part of, okay, maybe this is like a last question material, maybe, I don't know. But I think part of this collection, and maybe this is like part of the write up of the actual book, where it seems to want to tackle how politics or current events is able to affect real people. And I guess I just wanted to, like, get what your thoughts are on that from this story. Like, did it give you any new insight on, how politics affects real people and real relationships? And maybe, how you think the different stories were able to give you that insight.
For me, no real new insight, but it's more like, for me, it's more about feeling. Like, you really do feel the emotion, and it's so raw. So I wouldn't really say it provided new insight, except for except for what I mentioned about the whole, like, South Korea, like, also, like, I guess people just having that. I guess what I mentioned earlier about how South Korea also had this, like, you better keep quiet, or you can't stay true to yourself, or otherwise you'll be, like, ostracized by your community. Aside from that, no real new insight other than what we had discussed, which is that, I guess, the tragedy of, like, I don't want to say miscommunication or lack of communication. It's more of, I guess, limitations of our own perspective, and the delusions that we sort of tell ourselves or believe in, especially when we're in our relationships with other people. But yeah, and for the most part, like, it's really just like it's really just like, I guess, humbling in a way, sort of like reminding me that actually, like, what I go through and the tragedy of the relationships that I have with people, like, it's something that other people really go through, and, like, this is like a universal sort of thing. Um, I guess that's the biggest insight I got, but other than that, it's really just like feeling. yeah, feel.
Vibes.
It's like feeling that, like, I don't know. And you're right. Like it felt really, like, it felt so real, but it didn't feel like too much. Like, I didn't cry. Like, I didn't cry in any of the stories. So it wasn't overly emotional, but it really resonated with me, in like a human sort of way. Like, when I say human, oh, okay, you cried a lot. Okay, yeah. So it didn't, like, I didn't feel like it set out to make you cry. I think it just set out to tell a story that felt really real. It felt like, it wanted to tell, like, it felt like almost like reading a diary, or someone's diary, or someone's thoughts in a like uncensored sort of way. And most people, like, when you talk about, like, with almost everybody you talk to, there is some level of like censorship, because they don't want to reveal too much about, like, their own personal stuff or whatever. And so reading these stories, getting that unadulterated or uncensored, like, perspective, I mean, it was a good reminder of, like, I guess, the struggles or the suffering that we all are going through.
So yes, I'll go. For the first story, I don't recall any like explicitly political factor. I guess the big reveal was when Shoko said she was going through some depression, right? And so when she said that, like for the main character, it just kind of clicked, like, oh, so that's why she was really weird when I first met her, right? And like and that's the thing with mental health, no? Like nobody. It's rare for somebody when you meet them to declare that, yes, I have depression, so just a warning, when you interact with me, view me in that lens, right? Nobody does that, right? So sometimes we misinterpret certain things, like, oh, that was rude of her or him, right? And then we just leave that conversation feeling very negatively about that person. And then wow, and then like what, 10 years later, she was going through stuff. Whoops, right? And by that time it's too late. You've judged him or her, and so yeah, I don't know, so it's the call to be less judgmental. I mean, yeah, I guess so. But yeah, it's just a reminder that sometimes you just don't have the full story, about someone. So yeah.
Um, for me, in the second story, Sin Chow, you can't blame the child, the kid, the Korean kid, for what she learned, or what she was taught while growing up about the history of her country. So what's interesting for me is that um, you know, different cultures have different ways of or of viewing their history. Like, no one's thought that they are the villains in the story. So yeah, and it's very macro level, but it affected the um, personal relationships of their families. So it's interesting to think about how those very big events affect the small things in life.
I think for me, same with Rochelle. But I remember thinking, I found like the first two stories are about two different national traumas, and I felt like the second story was really good, but the first story tackled it really well, because the second story had the we can easily sympathize with the characters because they're children. They're like, okay, this is, through no fault of our own, we are affected by this national trauma, and this is how we're processing. But Choco's smile for me was really, it was such a great first story for the entire book, because the national trauma affected them in ways that aren't so clear cut. Like, there's no dinner scene. Diba? In the second story, there's a dinner scene where everything comes to a climax, and everything, it's very tightly scripted. It's like a TV show. But like the first story, Shoko Smile, was like it's a novel. It was sprawling. It was really like how did being under Japanese occupation affect the grandmother? How did it affect your relations with the Japanese exchange student? And it's different. The effects are different. Like the grandfather who presumably suffered under Japan is suddenly super. Oh my God, I know Japanese also. There is it was such a complex story, which I mean, intellectually it's my favorite, though of course emotionally my favorite is different. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, intellectually, yeah, Shoko Smile really hits home, but there's no Thoy, there's no like there's no character that gives you hope, which the second story has for me. Um I think the whole reading the whole collection has made me really feel and understand how broken people are through no fault of their own, right? Like the grandfather, like, yeah, he grew up under Japanese colonization with all the shit that comes with that, right? And you know i I think when it comes to those things, when governments are involved with these traumatic experiences, I don't think people are also like allowed to open up about those things, right? I don't, especially in Asia, I think we don't have that culture of talking about our traumas, what we went through, because for some reason, of course, it could be like, government censorship still, which has happened or could still be happening. But I think also like something to do with just how society works, where we just kind of want to forget it and move on, and in the process we kind of just mess it up more because we're not healed. So yeah, we cause more problems, and I guess that's why, like, what Leo said with the grandfather, right? Like, he did not like Japanese colonization, but for some reason, this Japanese exchange student is like, oh my God, I can like vibe with someone, but it's like she's from like your, colonizer's country or whatever, right? So it was so weird, but like it was nice to see him finally open up. But of course, the family is jealous because it's like, you never opened up before, but he speaks a completely different language. But what would you expect, right? So all those problems, like, the I feel like the book was able to really hammer it home, just like, yeah, how messed up people are. And I think, yeah, the for me the silver lining, or the call to enlightenment is, being a soy in your own life and being a soy to other people. I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop now, but that was really, Robbie, I'm gonna hype it up for you, you're gonna love it.
Also the summer camp story.
I am excited, guys. Don't worry. I will finish it. I promise.
I just realized something like about all of the underlying tragedies and trauma in the story. Um, Usually, let's say when we read a story about war, for example, the circumstances of the tragedy is very prominent, like what's unfair, what happened, how many people were affected. But I just realized that the stories in this collection, they're always from a time where the major action has already passed. Like, for example, the fairy thing, it's almost like the fairy gets revealed at the end. So it's not so much about the circumstances of tragedy, what's unfair, but it's about how they eventually cope. So, like, emotionally, it's not really happening in the moment, but rather what happens after everything's like done and dusted. Yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, I don't know how the author can actually write about these kinds of perspectives, because I feel like you have to really understand what those people went through in order to write like that. So I think that's a really um, powerful point about this collection. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, yeah, you did. I honestly wish we could talk to her because it's like, where did you get all these emotions and the ability to convey them with so much clarity? But there's a language barrier. I don't think we have a budget to hire a translator for it. So, yeah. And she doesn't seem to be doing a lot of interviews as well. Like I tried to at least look for an interview, a translated interview. I didn't find any, but I'll keep digging. So yeah.
We can pitch in, and get a person. Yeah,
If we are able to contact the author, because
yeah, yeah.
I think a lot of the time, like with these authors, like you have to talk to their agents, and they don't always. Actually, they never reply. So yeah, we get lucky sometimes with an author who replies and says, "Yes, I am game," which is Lisa C last from our June book. But yeah. Um all right. Do you guys have anything else to say or you want to talk about? Because I'm out of questions. Oh wait, sorry. I have a question. I did not understand the secret. Like, is it just keeping the illness a secret? Is that the secret? Because I had a feeling that maybe the granddaughter Jimin, maybe like she died, and the family is keeping it a secret from the grandmother. Like that's kind of like what I got, just because the granddaughter just like went AWOL or MIA. Yeah, okay. I had a feeling. Okay, it's okay. So same hunch as Yue, but I wasn't sure either. Like I have no proof of that. What made you think it was the fairy incident, Yue?
I think partially because like the father was crying on the floor. They were like sharing a moment of grief, like that came later on, and then also the mother's reaction around the grandma. And at the end, but that's the translator's note, so I assumed that it was related. So Jimin is a probationary teacher, right? And a teacher, two contract teachers died while trying to save their students. So I assumed that they were related since the note came right after the story.
Yeah, yeah. That was
Yeah.
also it was a translator's note that clued me in, and not the story itself. And then I was able to like connect the dots, same as you with the dad.
Oh yeah, during their trip, maybe that was foreshadowing. They were playing in the water, and the grandma said, "This is going to be our last trip together," and then it came true. Yeah, I feel like maybe the grandma actually knows. Like, could be me reading too much into it though. Like in the end, um, she writes a letter that she knows she cannot send to her, and um, it ends by this line like she folded a letter and she would give it to Jimin at the place no mail carrier could access and hugged it to her heart. I feel like maybe she knows. She just doesn't
Yeah,
want to. She doesn't want to say it out loud or admit it.
yeah. Okay, I had the same interpretation. Like, quick side comment. I wish that these secrets wouldn't exist. Like, especially since um I feel like the grandmother has the right to know that her granddaughter, whom she loves so much and raised, is dead. Typical Asian family. I don't know. Can you tell me about
Oh, so
like
that's what happened. Sorry. Okay. Okay.
what part are you in, Leo, in that story?
Maybe one fourth done.
Okay, okay. Well, I guess
Mm,
you can tell us what your interpretation is,
yeah,
because it
I'll
it
leave it in
it
the
it
chat.
wasn't it wasn't clear exactly what the secret was. And it was when I started asking, like, oh wait, what's the secret? That's the title. And then yeah, that's when I started connecting the dots with the translator's note. Does anybody else have anything to say or add or share? Okay, Raphael, Rochelle, you guys are good. Okay, all right. Thanks
Okay. Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Enjoy,
Yeah.
Robbie.
Nice seeing you, Robbie,
Yeah.
Michelle.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Nice seeing you
Nice
guys.
meeting you,
Good
Bye.
Shoko.
night.
Ah, Steph.
Thank you,
Bye.
Rochelle.
Bye
Thanks,
bye.
everyone.